All right, so at this point, we have our first three squares, rectangles, and we've painted our thin layer on each rectangle. So I just kind of lightly patted mine, and mine do feel dry. How about you? All right, so our first technique is called opaque, and we are going to make, you can do some shapes on top, some paint strokes on top. What I want to see is that you're going to paint something on top here that is not see-through. So opaque means not see-through. Now, there are lots of acrylic colors that are actually transparent on purpose because we want to emulate this idea of oil painting that has lots of light reflecting through it, which is why a lot of the colors are transparent already, like actually black and purple are very transparent, whereas white is very opaque. So I have a layer of blue. I'm going to get my white paint out, and I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on my palette here. And now using my brush, I've cleaned my brush, and I'm kind of dabbing my brush in my paper towel to blot it a little bit. And I'm going to get my white paint now because I know it's very opaque. And let's just paint something on top of this layer. All right, try to get not so much water on your brush. So if your brush is very wet, blot it on your paper towel. By the way, whenever you add white to a color in acrylics, you'll be creating a tint. We know that.
Oh, Miss Dora, none of us can see your presentation.
Oh, you can't see it? How about now? Can we see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so white will not only make a tint, remember our tints, and white and added to any color will make it a tint. It will also give the color an opaque quality. So the more white you add to a color, the more opaque it will be, the less see-through it will be. All right, so I've got a little bit of white, and now I'm going to go over this, and I'm just going to make some little dabby paint strokes. And you can see here that I can, or you cannot see through the white to the blue. Now you don't have to cover it up completely. Just show me a little bit here that you cannot see through that white to the blue. All right, next I'm going to move on to transparent. And like I just said, some colors are very transparent already on their own, like purple, and even some blues. As you can see, I used this kind of ultramarine blue, and I put a little bit of water in it, and I can actually see through it to the paper. So this is actually already transparent. But let's go ahead and grab another color, and you can make any color transparent by adding water to it. But like I said, purple already is pretty transparent, so I'm going to grab my purple. All right, I am going to add the teeniest bit about of water, and see how when I drag it out, it's already looking transparent. I can see the plate, my palette, through the paint. And I didn't really even add that much water. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of lightly drag it on top of my blue. And what this is, by using a little bit of water and lightly dragging it across the dry layer, not only can I see through the purple paint and it's creating this transparent quality, this is actually another technique called glazing. Glazing is when you actually build up layers of transparent paint so that you can see through it, and ultimately it will build depth, and when light shines on it, it will be very kind of reflective. So glazing. And that's it. That's all we want to see for number 2, so that we can see through your top color to your bottom color. I can see through my purple to my blue.
Crystal.
Yes.
In our set we don't have purple, so should we use that with black?
Yeah, you can use any color you want.
Oh, okay.
All right, for scumble. Scumbling is going to be where we are going to make a rough texture on top of our previously painted paint. All right, so this is dry. Number 3 hopefully is dry. You've made a 1 layer. And now scumbling. We're going to dry brush another color on top. And dry brush is exactly what it sounds like. We are going to get a dry brush, no water on it. All right, so I'm going to grab one of my dry brushes that I haven't used, and it's got no water on it. You can use any brush you want. I think I'm going to try out the flat wash because it's kind of thick on the end and has corners. And then maybe I'll try my filbert with the rounded and see if it has a different effect. All right, so what we're going to do for scumbling, your brush is dry. Get whatever paint color you want. White is going to show up the most. Remember, it's opaque, but any color is fine. And what I'm going to do is get just a little bit of paint on here. Don't get too much because it'll become too wet. So just get a little bit of paint on your brush. Maybe even blot it a little bit on your paper towel. All right, and what really works, these brushes are really soft, which is not the greatest for scumbling, but you know what works really well is a poorly mistreated, a very mistreated brush. Let's say you have a brush that has dried paint on it and it's kind of hard. That's actually good for scumbling. All right, but this is a nice brand new brush, but I'm going to get a little bit of my white paint. I'm going to dab it on my paintbrush, and now I'm just going to dry brush it. It's almost like scrubbing it on top of that dry layer of paint. That's scumbling. Also like dry brushing. So it's dry brushing, but I'm gonna add another color. I'm gonna add a little bit of purple. Okay, and the effect is to create these layers of dried texture. If we were using a larger canvas, then this would be a fun technique for maybe a background to add texture to the background. All right, let's do number 4, and that'll be it for today. Number 4 is marbleize, and we're going to kind of create a marbling effect, like marble tiles or marble floor. All right, and to do this, what we're going to do is start out by putting some little dots of paint, and what I mean by that is sort of like little blobs. Put like a couple of different color blobs. I've just been using white, blue, and purple, so I'm going to keep doing that, but you can use whatever color you want. Now, marbling uses a lot of paint, so I don't recommend you using a lot of paint. I want you to be a little conservative with your paints. Okay, but try to get a couple of colors in there, 2 to 3 colors in there, and kind of goop them on right next to each other. Have them touch. All right, I'm going to use more paint than I want you to use just because I want you to see the effect. So you be a little bit more conservative with your paint though. And I'm going to goop some blobs on there. All right, so I'm going to lift this up just so you can see how goopy mine is. All right, so it's pretty kind of globs of paint there. All right, now the next step is to get either your paint knife, if it has a nice tip on it, like mine, or you could use something else like a pencil or a pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tip of my paint knife and I'm just going to drag it through the paint in sort of, I mean, you could do it really random, but I'm just going to do sort of a consistent little wave. And my goal here is to have these little veins of paint sort of swirl through and create a marbling effect. Now this is just one way to do a marbling effect. You can actually do this a lot of different ways. And this is just kind of a loose marbling. So it's technically just dragging the paint through the other colors. And I don't want to overwork it because then they'll just start to blend. All right, there's my marble eyes.